really happy to be here with you, and I'm really happy to see you and have you as a very special interview guest, Geoff Laughton, the Relationship Architect. You have been writing books, you've been working with people, couples, but also individuals. The books you wrote were built to last. So you're talking about how relationships last. Building a conflict-proof relationship, that's another book you wrote. And you just mentioned to me that you co-authored a book called Breakdown to Wake Up. And the person who put it together was, her name is Jocelyn Bellows. But first of all, let's just welcome you, Geoff Laughton. Hi.
Thank you. Great to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Very pleased to have you. It's wonderful. We've known each other for some time and became friends and worked with each other, or well, you worked with me, and I guess we kind of gave each other some influence. And
Oh
I
yeah.
think it's always great to chat with you. So, and you have a lot to say, I think, on relationships, not only relationships, but also you were maybe the person who kind of introduced me to the field of emotions a little bit more closely. I never really thought about it that much before working with you, and especially you're working with men. So we'll get into maybe how men could use this information about emotions and how women and men might differ in dealing with emotions.
hmm
So right. So the
Yeah.
overall title, maybe for the talk, may be why we have to feel and manage our emotions. So how, well, first of all, why do we have to feel our emotions? Yeah, maybe let's start with that one. Why do we have to
Okay.
feel emotions?
Well, there are a number of ways to look at that, but to me, there's a couple, three main reasons why we're better off being able to connect to our emotions than not. And one of the best stories I read, a true story that really illustrated this, is in a book by Mark Manson, who is, a favorite author of mine. And his most recent book, beautifully and poetically titled Everything's Fucked,
Hmm.
he has a story in the second chapter about a man that was a doctor and a very, very successful doctor, well loved in both his profession and his community. And he started getting headaches and other symptoms of something being wrong. And it turned out that he had a brain tumor. And if I remember correctly, it was initially diagnosed as inoperable. But knowing the risks involved, he found a doctor that went ahead and took the tumor out.
Hmm.
And within, roughly, I want to say probably 4 to 6 months, he had lost his family, lost his career, lost all his money, and his children wouldn't have anything to do with him. And he was living on the street. And not to be too much of a spoiler, but the bottom line was finding out that when they took the tumor out, they also took out the part of his brain that is where emotions and emotional regulation is handled by the brain. So they literally cut out his emotions. So imagine that your child gets married and you have a kid and they get married and you feel nothing, that they're happy, everybody's happy, and you're sitting there kind of looking like a zombie and not able to create context, not able to feel a thing. And that was part of why his wife divorced him, because all of a sudden he was literally like an automaton.
Yep.
So there's one reason right there. Imagine all of the things that any of you watching have come to love, like a beautiful sunset, a partner, having sex with a loved one, watching your kids play, enjoying your dog.
There you
My
go.
part background.
Perfect timing.
This is real life, people. So imagine that you couldn't have any of that. Now, imagine what it might be like on the flip side, that you're very, very, very close to one of your parents and they die. Or your best friend dies from COVID and you can't feel anything. You don't feel grief. You don't feel loss. You don't feel pain. Now, there are plenty of people that would go, your point is, what's so bad about that? Well, the reality of how emotions work is you don't get one side or the other only. You don't get the good ones unless you're willing to feel the harder ones. So, in essence, my first point is we need our emotions to be able to experience who we are and our relationship to other people and our world. Yeah. If it's strictly intellect only, it's dry. It's like the guy in Mark Manson's book.
It's not a real relationship. There isn't. And it's probably not very attractive either.
No,
as you just really illustrated, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and that's really the second point you just mentioned. You cannot have a romantic relationship, nor could you really have a loving relationship with people in your life that aren't your romantic partner. You could have a functional relationship, but if you had no emotion, you'd never be able to know what love feels like.
Yeah.
And for me, a life without that wouldn't be worth living.
Well, that's beautifully illustrated. And I think a very important point, we cannot have one without the other. We cannot really have the good stuff and the good feelings and the romance and the true love without the difficult feelings, the grief or the pain, the hurt that we might encounter. So that's a very powerful message to a lot of people, to me for sure, at this point as well. So thank you for that. That's
my pleasure.
Yeah, I mean,
there is one thing though that I want to point out, which is that, and this is why the title of the talk, where I talk about mastering emotion.
Yeah.
Because our emotions are predicated by thoughts. Your girlfriend doesn't make you breakfast one day for the first time in 30 days. Your mind immediately goes to, oh my God, she didn't make me breakfast. What's wrong? Something's wrong. And then we're upset and we get afraid or we get anxious and we're off to the races. And part of why that happens is because we can in a wholesale way, we believe that what our emotions are feeling is the truth, with a capital T. Now, obviously, if someone you love dies and you feel grief-stricken, that's normal. That's healthy.
Yeah.
But if your friend forgot to invite you to your birthday party and you're locked in your room with all the lights out for 3 days, that's not so normal. It's not so
Not so
healthy.
healthy. Yeah.
And we'll do things like that
Mm.
because the thought is, I didn't get invited. Then more thoughts come in of that's because he must not like me anymore, or I'm not valuable or important.
Mhm.
Then feelings of shame and sadness and hurt come in. So part of why we have to master emotions is so that our emotions don't master us.
That's
There's
important. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
there's a partnership that needs to happen. And really one of my favorite analogies for this that Eckhart Tolle has written about and spoken about many times, who we are is not our feelings,
mm,
nor our thoughts.
yeah.
And he makes the analogy of who we are, like our essence, our spirit, our spiritual, highest spiritual self that's walking around in these flesh bags we're all walking around in.
Mm,
That's like the ocean.
yeah.
And our thoughts and our emotions are waves. So it's important to notice them. And the third thing I didn't mention is that we have to feel our emotions because we have that energy. Emotion is emotional energy. And energy is inherently, by definition, always in motion.
Moving. Yeah.
And when it isn't, then it gets stuck in our body. And then our mind has to work harder to try and keep it locked away.
Mm,
And we know scientifically that that tends to create things like cancer.
mm,
So the trick is to learn to allow your emotions to be there, but to recognize them for what they are, let the energy move through you so that it comes, it's there, it goes. And after a big emotional, whether it's ecstasy or rage, on the other side of the wave of whatever the emotion is, there's usually insight and clarity.
yeah.
That when you're in the midst of, oh, I love you, but I'd really like to rip your face off now. When you're past that,
Right.
then you get to have the opportunity to look and see, okay, what does this have for me as a learning? How can I grow from what just happened that had me so angry or so hurt? And then that gives you in turn more agency over how you're experiencing your life.
Yeah.
Even with shitty stuff that's happening.
Mm.
Not that we have any of that going on in our world right now, but if there was,
If there ever was. If at one point in
how
your life
we
you encounter that.
right, how we experience that
Right.
requires us to allow our emotions to be there,
Yeah.
but know how to interpret them,
Mm-hmm.
how to transform them into something constructive
Yeah.
that then allows you to have all the power of being 100% responsible for how you're going to react or respond to whatever's happening out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, so we have emotions, we have then the thoughts that are connected to the emotion, or the stories then we tell ourselves what an emotion means. And then when we actually learn to feel the emotions and we can kind of let the waves come and go, then there is stuff that we can learn. We can change the stories we're telling ourselves about ourselves, and thus grow in this life. And I guess that's kind of the meaning of, you know, mastering emotions to a degree. So can you let us know a little bit about, since you're the relationship architect, you said, you know, constructively work with emotions. Is there anything that you, first of all, that you tell people how to do that? And also, since you're working with men and women, but I know you're also working with lots of men's groups, so you're kind of supporting men and kind of feeling emotion, or dealing with emotions, mastering emotions. Is there anything in particular, any message for men in particular, or how do they differ? How do men and women kind of differ in mastering their
Sure.
emotions? It's a
So
big
before I
question, I guess,
answer,
but
yeah, well, yeah, just a little.
good.
Um, but it's a really, really important question.
Mm,
And one thing I want to say, because I beat myself up for forgetting to say it if I did. Um, one other key thing is related to your question,
mhm,
but another element that I've been, you know, just really to be honest, in the last year, it's been kind of this aha for me, even though Buddha taught this 6,000 years ago or however long ago he was on the planet.
mhm,
Another cause of emotional suffering is because our ego is really attached to only want to feel good things.
mhm, mhm.
And so then if we're feeling bad, notice we even use that word.
Right.
If we're feeling bad, negative, uncomfortable, unpleasant emotions, our minds immediately judge those as that's not good. I don't want to feel that. And yet, most of what I have learned in my life that has mattered
Mhm,
never came when I was happy and having a great time. It always has come through having to navigate pain and loss and suffering and so forth.
yes.
So I want to say that that's the third element of emotional mastery is that you recognize it's just energy
Mhm,
and that it's all neutral.
right.
And I'm practicing that, I am not telling you and your audience that I have that all down tight. I don't. But as I've been
Right.
really pursuing that
Yeah.
as an intention and a committed practice,
Mhm,
my level of emotional equilibrium and my level of equanimity
mhm,
in the midst of so much insanity
mhm.
and heartache and suffering that's happening globally right now.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not uncompassionate about it. I care, but I'm not being buffeted around by my feelings about it. And my feelings of hope and faith
Mhm,
are valuable. And when I cry and I'm sad about people that I know that are losing people with the pandemic, my heart aches, and all of that makes me feel alive. And I get to be in charge of staying grounded in the midst
yeah.
because I'm working on not judging one emotion as being better than the other.
Yeah.
So now to your main question, um, emotions in relationship. I really believe that one of the reasons we get into relationships is so that we're going to inadvertently or advertently get emotional healing.
Mhm,
We're all walking around with wounds.
mhm,
There's not a single human being who isn't.
mhm.
Only difference is some have healed them more than others have
Yep.
healed, but we all
Just
have
the
them.
degree of healing, kind of, right?
Right,
Yeah. Mhm,
right. So they're going to be a part of your relationship. And where that gets to be really messy, in my experience, is when women think that men should think and feel the way they do, and men wondering why women don't think and feel the way we
The
do.
way that we do. Yeah.
Big mistake. Both men and women, I mean, to me, even if you just look at the last, I don't know, 600 years of literature and poetry, some of the most beautiful poetry ever written has been by men.
For
So
sure. Yeah.
men
Well,
are really emotional,
Mm-hmm.
just like women.
Mm-hmm.
So this is one thing I really want to emphasize to everybody watching.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We are no different
Right.
emotionally. The
Yeah.
real difference is men, I'll just speak for the US. I can't speak for other cultures. But for generations, we've been brought up as boys
Mm.
to suppress our feelings. Many a boy has had a caring, loving mother
Mm-hmm.
who thought that her job was to train him to be tough.
Mm.
So there have been plenty of boys raised by women who, not through any conscious, intent to mess them up, but have messed them up
Right.
and given mixed messages about, well, you should be caring and thoughtful and considerate. Jesus, don't cry. Don't show that you're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Don't show your emotions other than when you completely get ecstatic and lose your shit over a touchdown
Right.
or a goal. I'm
Right.
talking to a German. So a
A
goal,
goal.
right?
Yes, thank you. Well,
um,
probably people all over the world will hopefully watch this and benefit from this. So it's good to have
right.
different metaphors here. The soccer one and the football one.
So at sporting events, men are allowed to be,
To be emotional but
um,
and expressive, yeah.
and and I think I know that there have been many women who have wondered, well, why do men want sex so much?
Mm.
Well, because sex is the one place where we let ourselves be emotional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That is a key way that men connect to their hearts. And that's the context in which that can be natural.
Mm.
I'm not saying that all men are there when they're having sex, but
Exactly.
I
Yeah.
think a
They're,
man who's connected to his heart,
mm.
it's easier to do that when you're being intimate
Mm.
with your partner.
Right.
And I'm talking about man women, that it's a similar energetic dynamic with gay couples.
Yeah.
So it's masculine, feminine
Feminine energies
dynamic.
dynamic. Mm.
So I think that, one of the things that really is different for women is not that they are emotional, it's strictly a matter of access.
Yeah.
Women have more readily available access to their emotions, unless it was, beaten out of them when they were children.
Right. So it's
Because
mm. So it's more in the society or in their upbringing. It's more normal. It's more okay to show their feelings and maybe show a variety of feelings. So men aren't so allowed to do that, and probably have a hard time kind of wrapping their head around how to start opening up. And I get the point that relationships are actually a very great opportunity to start opening
right,
up and to kind of I guess be challenged to actually, yeah, and I think, I mean, from my own experience, that's really what we men want, right? We want to open up, we want to be emotional, we want to be really in connection. Do you notice that as well in your groups?
Yeah,
And yeah,
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 absolutely. I mean that's one of the reasons that I ended up getting involved in leading men's work is going to a men's weekend where I opened up. And I grew up around men who were unemotional. Well, they were not unemotional.
hmm,
The emotion that they were most willing and able to access was rage.
right. Wow.
So I grew up afraid of a lot of feelings.
Mm,
And so when I got to be with a group of men, a lot of men, who were being very open about all of their feelings and that were sharing their wounds with each other,
hmm,
sharing their shame that they
hmm,
were carrying,
hmm,
sharing about sexual shame that they
yeah,
were carrying,
yeah.
all the stuff that when people ask a man, hey, how are you feeling? Fine, I'm
Right.
good. Um, if that's such a lie.
Yeah.
Men are holding so much grief
Oh yeah.
and even men that are rageful, that's just where their grief has gotten channeled to because of the fear of getting totally lost in the grief. At least if you're pissed off,
Hmm.
you feel, I'm powerful.
Yeah.
But then you end up shitting on the people that you let that out on irresponsibly and unconsciously.
Right.
So that really showed me that the way I was going to be healthiest
Hmm.
as a man, as a husband, as a father to sons
Hmm.
is I had to learn how to let those feelings up and do it in a safe way
Yeah.
and in a conscious way so that I'm not hurting other people.
Hmm.
But I also had to let all my grief up
Yeah.
because none of us get through childhood without grief. So
That's another
I think,
important point. Yeah.
yeah, I think I went off a
No,
little
that's
on a tangent. So
that's
coming back,
mm, well, I think it's an important point, but yeah,
yeah.
go continue your thought, and then I'll ask a question.
So I think the one thing in the short amount of time we have left that I could
Mm,
say is men and women, if you can each respect that there is a real difference between how we process and access our emotions,
yeah.
and you learn kind of how to. I mean, I was raised primarily by women, so I'm pretty comfortable with women's emotions
Hmm.
and how they tend to be with them.
Hmm.
And, so I say, I'm pretty fluent in female and I'm very fluent in male.
Hmm.
I can speak and feel
Yeah.
both languages, as it were.
Hmm.
You have to learn each other's language,
Yeah.
each other's emotional language. And with men, another mistake we make because we're so uncomfortable with our own emotions is that if we're with a woman and she's being emotional, that frightens internal parts of our subconscious mind
Hmm.
because we were trained that it's not okay to feel
Yeah.
those feelings.
Right.
So, one of the best ways to begin healing that is that one, you do the work that needs to be done to get comfortable with all of your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
male or female.
Mm-hmm.
And then you actually practice being transparent and vulnerable with your partner if you're in a relationship, where if you're noticing that feelings are coming up and you're noticing that you're trying to, push them
Push them
down,
back down, yeah.
see what happens if you said, oh my God, I have so much feeling coming up right now, and I really want to push it down. I don't want to tell you. I don't want to feel it. And then, of course, you're going to fall apart.
You're right.
And then you'll let yourself feel it.
Yeah.
So stop trying to hide
Cool.
them.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, this is one of the beautiful things about men's groups and one of the most beautiful things about women's groups. Men, as you're trying to bolster or maybe reestablish your own emotional literacy,
Mm-hmm.
do not look to women to give that to you.
Right.
They can't.
Mm-hmm.
No healthy woman wants to be your new mommy,
Right.
right? You go to men.
Mm-hmm.
We can hold each other's pain
Right.
because no woman knows fully what it's like to be a man and what men
Wow.
go through from boyhood up.
Yeah.
And women
And
need
women also,
women's
right?
groups.
Need women's
Yeah.
groups. Okay, so
Oh my God.
that's why it's important to have separate groups, possibly, even though one might think, in order for women and men to be good with each other, it's good to kind of mix, but it might be good to be understood as a man. It might be good to open up to other men, and to be understood as a woman, it's important to open up to
And
other women
then,
and then come
right,
together.
and
Right.
then bring, you know,
The
like one of the
insights and
things one of the things I coach men with is if you're really struggling emotionally about something,
Mhm.
come to your men's group and share it there first.
Right.
Work through it with the other men. Because one of
Mm-hmm.
the great things about men
Mm-hmm.
is because we can feel each other, even if we're going, I'm good.
Yeah.
I have no emotional issues right now. Men will call bullshit on that in a
They
heartbeat,
will notice. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you get to, in a way, it's like you get to practice
Mm-hmm.
and get insights that only other men can give you from a male perspective, integrate that. And then it's enormously useful to go to your partner then from a
Share.
place of already feeling resourced and strong, and you're sharing what you're learning
Yeah.
as opposed to
Yeah.
going to her from a young place, going, I'm really struggling with this. I really want you, can you make it better for me, please?
That's not so helpful. I get
No, women are
it.
like, get the fuck out of
Out.
here.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So you,
Yeah, I
I
get
hope
that.
all
So,
that made sense.
well, that's really beautiful, and I mean, getting the support and also being able to get some insight on how to communicate to a woman. I think it's great to have other men reflect that, and to just get a second opinion or a third opinion from other men. And I think for women, it's probably the same way. It's if they, not just have their best friend, but maybe even a group of women that they could open up to, and they get various opinions, and they can just test things out. And I know that from my own men's groups and yours as well, where I could join. Um, how relieving it is to have somebody also just say, well, you're just full of shit right now. That's not true what you're saying. Or and then but it's lovingly pointed out. It's never against you. It's really just people, men are trying to help you, or women are trying to help you, for women.
Right.
So I think very important points there. And if we had more time, maybe for another talk, we could dive more into the grieving part. I think that's a very important point you mentioned there, that men, probably women as well, are full of grief, and we need to, from childhood, and we need to kind of go through that. I wonder why you mentioned that one, but I think that's another important point. So,
Well, every men's workshop I've ever led or been in, led by other people,
mhm,
when men finally open up, grief is a far more prevalent emotion than
right,
rage.
right, right. I couldn't agree more. It's from my own experience. That's the rage
Right.
might be on top of it, but once that's gone, once that's dealt with, the grief comes out, right? It's kind of really
Yeah,
the underlying
exactly. And
emotion.
that, about so many things. And, before we went on to the recording, you were talking with me about, men in groups now, what are they dealing with?
Yeah.
And a lot of the men in our groups are millennial aged men,
Mm-hmm.
late 20s to late 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And their two biggest issues that they're looking for support with in a group. One is how to deal with all the emotions they have
Right.
in a powerful way,
Yeah.
in a way that honors both their masculinity and their feminine side, which we all have,
Yeah.
and how to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
How should I be behaving?
Mm-hmm.
But what would make me, a what's the term? A toxically masculine man.
Mm-hmm.
Women want us to be masculine,
Right.
but they also want to be able to feel us. But if we let out our feelings in a certain way, then they're repelled because now we look weak to women.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a
So how do we
lot
deal
of
with that, right?
confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I agree.
a
Mm-hmm.
lot of confusion about, and women have it too.
Mm-hmm.
Women that have to be very masculine in the workplace, then when they come home, they just want to be able to be in their femininity and their
Mm-hmm.
heart, their emotions.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to make that switch very well,
Mm-hmm.
then how do you deal with each other
Mm-hmm.
if you're in a straight relationship? How,
Yeah.
how do you manage those energies? And if you're in, another non-heterosexual relationship, the energetics are the same.
Yeah.
How do you work with
Exactly.
that?
Yeah.
So,
So maybe as the last question, if you still have a couple of minutes,
yeah.
then what can be possible once the woman, the man, or they start, or we start kind of clearing up the emotions, or actually mastering emotions. What did you see from your own experience? Or maybe you have an example, or a couple. Um, what's happen like what's possible, where do people start, and where do they, if they're confused and they don't know how to deal with their emotions, how to be a man but not being toxic, how to be a woman but not being toxic, what do you see possible?
Well, from my own life experience, um, what's possible is an enormous amount of emotional freedom. You get to be you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not getting to be you if you're trying to manage your emotions within an inch of their life,
Mm-hmm.
which for men usually means denying that we have them.
Yeah.
Right? So I can just say, um, part of how I have gotten there, and it's an ongoing practice, but when I first started working on myself when I was about 35, the first step is just to feel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I went through workshops that were incredibly good at bringing up emotions that were shut away and hidden away.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, a variety of work out there that's good for helping stimulate emotional release. So first, you got to feel
Right.
and discover that you're not dead when you're done. You will survive feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing that I think is critical to help this whole process is you have to really develop an intimate relationship with your body.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be able to know where in your body do you store particular emotions.
Right.
When you can learn to read your, oh, my stomach's there, or oh, I have a sore throat,
Mm-hmm.
I'm bottling something up. When you learn where you tend to, you know, stuff, okay, I'll put my grief there, I'll put my rage there, I'll stick my self-doubt in my pants. What am I going to do?
Right.
You have to get connected to your body.
Mm-hmm.
And the other crucial thing that unlocks things in the body is breath.
Hmm.
Probably one of the biggest things I'd recommend for people that are listening to me and going,
Hmm.
damn, I think he's on to something. Maybe I
Right.
should um, find breath work, holotropic
Awesome.
breath work,
Yeah.
movement. I remember one workshop where I cracked open a bunch of old feelings that I had stuffed,
Great.
where the facilitator had
Yeah.
us dance. We
Yeah.
were dancing
Yeah.
as hard as we could
Yeah.
until we felt like we were going to drop.
Right.
And and she says, keep going.
Going.
Fuck you.
What the
Keep going.
going?
And oh my God, it was so great. And
Wow.
I mean,
Mm.
it's like anything when you
Yeah.
push yourself past where you think you
Yeah.
can go,
Yeah.
you're always going to discover something
Right.
unseen.
Right.
So that's something you could do in the privacy of your own home and dance hard
Mm-hmm.
until you're sweating and you want to stop and keep going.
Keep going. Yeah. Moving, I guess. Yeah. And then breath work. We have a couple of very good breath workers here on the summit as well. So that might
Ah,
fit very nicely. And they're offering also online breath work. So that's a good fit.
well, whoever you
Thanks.
are, if you're watching this interview, get in touch with me.
Yeah. Okay.
I, I'm always looking for breathwork practitioners.
Oh, great. Yeah. I will put you in touch. For sure.
Have their girl call my girl and we'll do lunch.
Right, exactly. Okay. I hope they'll watch this one and yeah, I'll let them know. So, okay. Well, and you're also offering for couples especially, since you recommend kind of designing relationships, you call it the relationship design course,
Yeah,
and it's an audio class where
it is. It is
you probably know. Yeah.
actually it's a video class.
Oh, it's a video class. Okay.
Yeah, and it has four modules. I think each one's, if I remember correctly, it's half an hour, 40 minutes.
Hmm.
It's manageable.
Yeah.
And yes, it's for couples, but it's also for people who are single that are looking for a relationship. If you go through this course, when you find somebody you're interested in, you're going to have a much higher probability of it being successful if it's a mutual fit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can use the principles that I teach in it
Yeah.
when you are dating and you're dating enough that you realize, oh, I think I might
Mm.
want to be in a committed relationship,
Hmm.
the two of you can use these, insights and perspectives
Yeah.
to help you consciously design the relationship you both want rather than just bumping into what you don't want because you don't think about this stuff up front.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And you certainly have a lot of experience, not only in your own marriage and your own relationship, but also working with lots of couples. So people can reach you at www.yourrelationshiparchitect.com.
Correct?
I remember that one. And you still work with couples and individuals. I know you're probably full. Your schedule is probably, but people can still reach out and
Oh, yeah.
ask for
I
consultation and
have a
stuff,
little
right?
bit of room
Right.
and I have a waiting list. And I just want to shamelessly plug
Right.
www.theevolvingman.com. If you're a man that's been listening to this, we have men in our community from all over the world.
Right. So
So if
that's
you
the
want to hear
evolving man
more,
with an A, right? Not an E, but an A, or is it evolving man in
hey, yeah,
plural? A, it's
theevolvingman.com.
singular. Yeah. Okay.
So if you want to know more about that, or if you're a woman with a male partner who's been listening to me and going, oh my God, I wish my man knew that.
Yeah. I think a lot of women probably thank you
They
after
do.
working with their men. So
This is true.
yeah, yeah, I heard that a lot about men's groups that the women are really interested of their men going there. So after a while, at least. So
No, it's really
yeah,
great.
yeah,
Just a final comment about that.
mm,
What I'm really heartened to be seeing here is for the last 18 years, I've been doing the men's stuff for 20. The
hmm,
first 18 years, 95% of any men who found me, it was through women,
hmm,
their wives, their girlfriends, female friends.
yeah,
In the last couple of years, our community has grown dramatically, and it's men looking for what we have to offer.
yeah. So there's clearly a
So,
shift in consciousness or a shift in attitude and yeah, men are catching on. That's great. It's good to
thank you,
hear.
God. Yes,
Right. Thank you so much for your generous time and your great energy, Jeff. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and there were some wonderful insights. I hope people got as much out of it as I did. I'm sure they will, and in case they want to know more, they know how to reach you now. And
yep. And
thank you
thank
so
you
much.
for inviting me. I mean, I never ever need an excuse to talk to you. I love talking with you and I value our friendship. And thank you for making all this available to the people that you're spreading all this to with this summit.
Yeah,
So thank you for inviting me to be a part of it.
that's great. It's great to have you part of it, and we'll see what comes out of it. It feels like it's kind of much needed at the moment.
Oh, yes.
So thanks again, and be well, Jeff.
You too.
Thank you. Welcome to another. This is perfect. I love it. Yeah, okay. This is the perfect start. I'll just leave it in. It's about emotions, right? So it's about happiness right now.